Welcome to the Hasson Studio and our introduction to the Speedball bent nib pens. In this section we'll be going over the Speedball B nib pen with the round tip. The Speedball B nib was the second nib that was introduced. When they introduced the Speedball pen, they introduced the square pen first. The reason they introduced the square pen first is because they only had enough money to manufacture one. And they said, should we do the round pen first or the square pen first? Ross George, being the ever-present entrepreneur, went ahead and said, I'm going to introduce the square pen first because it has a flat lettering shoe with the monotone letters, but then I can also flip it over and use it as a regular pen. It's two pens in one. And so the square pen came out in 1914, the round pen came out in 1915 and was introduced in the 1916 book. These are some of the samples that round pen can do. Many of you who have experience in lettering might think that the round pen is a more rudimentary tool, but I would say no. This is one of the early Speedball books that the pen men across the country were having trouble. They were holding the pens more like they would hold a broad edge pen, more upright, as I showed you before, instead of flat. And so these are illustrations in order to say you need the flat lettering shoe on the page. Hold it more like a pencil, not more like an upright pen or a brush. These pages are in here. They look very rudimentary and very simple. However, they're breakthrough pages. This is William Gordon in 1916 being one of the first individuals to actually add stroke order and dashes to indicate in which direction the strokes went. Prior to this time, you would get lettering books and all you would see are alphabets, and then it was up to you to replicate the alphabets. But Gordon, being one of the finest show card men in the country, became one of the finest teachers in the country, and this is one of those pages. He also innovated and he used the music staff writer. The music staff writer is a 5-pronged tool that would draw 5 lines at a time so that you could write music on it. Well, he adapted it to basic lettering styles. The 3 in the middle were how big the bowls of the letters were. Here's your ascenders and here's your descenders. Again, nobody had done anything like this and explained it quite so well up until the time that William Gordon did in the early Speedball textbooks. Again, he's talking about outline lettering. Now with the Speedball B pen, how easy it is to use these pens and how quickly they can flow. And even though some of this lettering looks very rudimentary and very, very simple, these letters are pretty hard to make, and standing alone, they actually are elegant letters. We'll go back to Ludwig Holbein. Now we're in the approximately the 1918s to 1920s. I believe this is a little bit after the war. But look how he's using monoline letters. There are no thicks and thins in these letters, and they're just gorgeous. And here they are in context, and in the handout book, I've actually pulled them out of those so that you could see just the lettering. The lettering at the top is some lettering that I did as a demo, lettering at the top in blue in a class, and the other lettering is all Ludwig Holbein. And so these are letters that we wouldn't normally think of. They're extremely rounded in character. He was a virtuoso at making, for example, the M in Mercedes is done in 2 strokes. Most people wouldn't do that. The B seems to be done all in 1 stroke, or at least sketched out. Gorgeous work with monoline letters. So this can give you some idea of the possibilities. Now, we shouldn't leave out Ross George. A little bit later in life, and when Ross George took over the Speedball textbooks, he said, well, why do I have to just be limited to one size of lettering? And so he used 2 different sizes of the Speedball B pen in order to make Roman lettering. Yes, you probably are going to have to sketch these out first, but what a gorgeous treatment of these letters. And he didn't stop there. He made a whole bunch of different styles of outline letters. You can see the letters at the bottom. These letters down here are based on architectural styles of the time. And so he worked with these letters and worked with how to innovate and how to create based on these letters. This lettering was just a demo that I was doing. We were working in one of the classes, and for some reason, I don't know if I got a blob on the end of one of the letters or I put the blob on the end of that A, but I started working with the thicknesses at the end of these letters. And so there's a lot of possibilities. This could be developed into something that's an interesting alphabet based on those little blobs. So the B pen, this little rounded B pen, is actually very versatile. So we were looking at, with these round pens, we were looking at some lettering that was a little bit more of a script. Those of you who know the term uncial in lettering know that uncial is a very rounded letter form. So again, I'm going to work at a 1-inch scale, and this could perhaps be an uncial style A. Uncial was a capital letter alphabet, and so the characteristic of the alphabet is that it was very rounded. And so if I wanted to work with a very rounded letter form and just adapt it to a historic letter form that I already know instead of a perhaps rudimentary letter form that indicates that I'm just learning or that I'm trying to make something readable, then I might do perhaps something like this. Well, why don't we just go ahead and try and be clever and cross both of these. And so this particular tool is one that probably will be a favorite of the calligraphers just because it's so easy to use. It glides and just works. Now, if I change the actual weight of the letter, in other words, I've gone from this size pen nib to this giant size pen nib, but if I stay at the same size, I can also create some very interesting letters as well. So let's go ahead and go back to this uncial style. Let's get the ink to flow in this big giant nib. And so if I did something like this in the uncial style, all of a sudden I have a whole different feel, don't I? And so I can really kind of create, based on some of my own experiences, a letter form perhaps that other people might not think of. Okay, that seems arrogant to say. Of course other people can think of that. But why don't you do the letter form that you can think of? Let's go ahead and do. So what happens when you make it up as you go along? So there's some possibilities with the round B nib. Again, you want to keep that nib flat on the page in order to get these round letter forms and get the round finishes. If you don't keep it flat on the page, you'll get kind of a rough finish like that. And if you do get a rough finish and that bothers you, really all you have to do is come back in and sort of rock the pen at the end, and you won't get that round finish. You can clean it up pretty easily. This is the Sandia Workshop's webpage for Writing with a Bent Nib, my section of classes. The classes will appear there. You'll first see an article where you can sign up for the mailing list right here. You will automatically get that article. Here are the different classes and styles of lettering that would come with each class section. And again, down at the bottom, you can go ahead and sign up and download this article that was written both by myself and Michael Clark.